Namo tase bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tase bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tase bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Let us begin the session with a short meditation. So let us sit comfortably. The meditation practice will also reflect the sutra that we are doing today. Sitting comfortably, quiet in the mind, coming into the present. Taking a deep breath in, relaxing mind and body to the present. Guiding your attention towards the whole body. Quieting the bodily sankhara, relaxing each and every muscle across the body. Letting go of the past and the future. And for this short period, let us focus entirely upon the present, fully present with the body, noting each arising and passing, the nature of impermanence, apparent through the mind and the body, the arising and passing phenomena, gently, gently. Note the grossness in the present, with every arising, ripple, chin, moment, as you let go, the grossness becoming lighter, lighter, the mind and the body, the mind and the body, being content with whatever the present might be. Gently, gently, let us attempt to persist with the least amount of sankhara arising. Look upon all phenomena with equanimity, not ignoring them, but not fazed, not judgmental, non reactive. Observe, observe. gently. Let us, for this moment, be free of all sankhara. Find peace and contentment in the peaceful present. May all these efforts be for the attainment of Nibbana. May we observe letting go of the phenomena that arises. See as the phenomena arise and see, let go. Within this present, being here without bond, letting go of all external bonds, without attachment, need or want, just be present, present, present. through this freedom of the present. A deep sense of lightness, arising within the mind and body. Gently, 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 guiding your attention all across the body and the mind. Radiating vibrations of loving kindness, arising, seizing all formation, advert with loving kindness. mind and body. Mural formation. That arise and cease in its own nature, without any sense of worry, simply dwell with loving kindness, contentment, presence. When you are ready, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, everyone. In our previous sutra sessions, we discussed in length about the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra, where we went into the details of the Dukkha Satcha in the end, isn't it? And we went over those details with examples over the different types of sankhara that arise as phenomena. And then, of course, we went for a break. Now we come back, and with our learnings from the Sunday sessions, we relate a lot of experience or efforts into the understanding of being within the present. Relating that sense of presence to the sankharas, when there is a bond that is present, this bond is like potential, or it is a condition which is a potential. And this condition, when the five aggregates that is within that present moment, that condition is clung on to, then it becomes part and parcel of this self aggregate, which falls into the materiality or the perceptions or the mental states, the five aggregates in whole. When the five aggregates are formed in the present, because of conditioning, these five aggregates become, of course, the five aggregates of clinging. These five aggregates of clinging is the reason is dukkha satcha, as well as we can see the samudaya satcha, the second noble truth, which is the clinging aspect, isn't it? That is how the five aggregates of clinging occurs. Now, what does the five aggregates of clinging look like to us? The five aggregates of clinging right now, just as I am speaking and you might be listening, the speaking we interpret is done by a doer. The listening we interpret or understand is done by a doer again. So we have, or we see this circumstance, this environment here, this occurring here through a frame where there is a doer. That exactly is the five aggregates of clinging. However, we do not recognize it as five components. We recognize this as one component. I am experiencing. When that notion of I occurs, the five aggregates of clinging are therefore visible right there. The mind, because the mind shifts, change, isn't it? Impermanence. And because it is impermanent, we know it is suffering. Because it is impermanent, it is suffering. How can we interpret this if we just talk it amongst ourselves? Because of impermanence, there is suffering. So, what is the impermanence and the suffering there? How can we understand that? Dil, would you like to say something? Okay. എന്നെ
I'm listening to you from Oxford, Bante, so everything is different. I can't see, but doesn't matter. But anyway, I'm here. So Bante, because the three characteristics of existence we know is impermanence is one, and because there is impermanence, everything changes. So when everything is changing, because we are attached to the way it is, even when it is good or bad, even the good changes and the bad also will changes later. But when things have changed from good to bad, or even if it is good at the moment, it doesn't remain like that. It changes again. And because of that craving, that tanha, the attachment, then you will be unhappy because that is not the reality. That's not absolute reality. So when you don't like what it is, then all those things, dukkha, domanassa, pasa, all those sambhavanti, grief, sorrow, pain, lamentation, despair, all those things come one after another. So then the impermanence becomes suffering.
Yes, yes. So then the nature of impermanence is there, and the seven types of dukkha, soka, parideva, dukkha, domana, supayasi, seven types of suffering is there, right? So then the nature of change lead to suffering. So when you are attached to things, when you come close to things, or when you are rejecting, or rather attaching yourself to comfort, hence rejecting, in these kinds of situations, there is constant change. This particular type of change-based suffering is called viparinama dukkha. Viparinama dukkha. The dukkha, the suffering that arises due to change. Suffering that arises due to change. Now, this change is apparent, isn't it? Sometimes it is apparent, sometimes it is not. For example, when comfort becomes discomfort, it is apparent. When discomfort becomes comfort, the physical type of pains or the pleasant pains, these are apparent. When change occurs, how can we go into another depth to understand? So this is right. When we are attached or when we seek comfort or trying to get away from discomfort, there is suffering. And change, because it changes, there is suffering. So what we are saying is when the change occurs and happens, then that creates a change in the circumstance, hence there's a suffering. Okay. So there is the prajnapti, the sammuti world, and where a change occurs equals to then suffering. how can we then go into another depth where, is there another way that we could understand that suffering? How change equals to suffering? Is there another way? How change equals to suffering?
So that is Sankara Dukkha, Bhante, because if you start proliferating a prapancha and you have tanha ditthima going on in your mind and we are telling stories about it, then we are attached to that second arrow of that of the Saldeka Sutta, and then we keep on suffering, Bhante. Because there is dukkha dukkha and viparinama dukkha, and then there is Sankara Dukkha.
I mean, there is this method that is taught where, for example, let us say today we are going through something. So we are experiencing the pain from the onset of right now. So we are observing this, we are observing this, we are observing this. And then we go into a moment where we contemplate when was the last time that I experienced pain. So then we go on to tomorrow, yesterday, let us say, yesterday or day before, or a week before, whatever, doesn't matter. And from that onset, we calm ourselves and, we reflect upon that situation. And to an extent where we completely shut out the present moment right now, and we are completely in that situation in the past that happened, that occurred. Now, when you're observing the faculties or elements of suffering there, those elements of suffering worked on other conditions, isn't it? Right? Here, today, in the present moment, the suffering that is now works on another spectrum of, or another number of conditions. These conditions are not connected to the conditions that arose previously. When you look at those conditions and then you go even before, what you find is that then again, the conditions that arose even before are even more unique or different, just different, but another set of conditions. Hence, you come to, through that, you realize the ego center, wherever you base yourself on from the onset, when you look at, that is the position, or that is where the aggregates create that suffering. Now, let me explain in this way. In the power technique, they teach us this method of attaining a deep state of anatma. This technique is taught when with regards to the Paticcasamuppada. So this is after you have discerned Nama and Rupa, and you are in the position of discerning the cause and effect between the Nama and the Rupa that arises, remember, in the past, present, and the future. All right? In the past, present, and the future. Now, in this technique, what they do is, Pauk Sayadaw teaches to go into the past, okay? To go into the past. This is through, let us say, Pubbhi Nivasanu Sati Jnana, the recollection of past lives, okay? The recollection of past lives, which is a technique that can be developed through the Satipatthana as well, right? The recollection of these past lives, let us say now, there is one, let us say Bante, myself, okay? So I am here, I am now observing my whole amount of conditions that are present. Whatever Dukkha Satya that is present to Bante, 29th of May, okay? Now, this Bante sits for meditation and goes, let us say, a lifetime in the past. Okay? In this lifetime, this being, let us say, is of another name, right? Is of another name, is another being altogether. Now, this being, story, family, all of these things is of course different. This being, suffering, is completely again different. Now, when you are looking for the causes of this person's suffering, right, you go to the past again. Do you understand? You go to the past again. Now, this being, right, so again, Bhante, Bhante's suffering of the present, you go to, let us say, in the past. The cause of that suffering is in the past. Now, this person who has caused that karma is entirely different person. That person's dukkha satya or that person's reality or that person's conditions are completely unrelated to me. But that karmic action was done there. Now you look at the causes and conditions of that person, right? To do or perform or fall into the circumstance of performing that karma. And you, let us say, you go back 2 lifetimes before that. Okay? Now you're going even further back. Then you discover that this person's, the earlier persons after Bhante, the early before Bhante, earlier person's karma is deemed, let us say, 2 lifetimes before, and that has no connection to this person. That cause and effect is on another condition. You get it? Hence, what are you seeing? A weaving of a story, a weaving of a story, a weaving of something, right, which we call, let us say, a stream of consciousness, but completely unrelated in the type of person, in the type of being, and the causes and conditions that are giving way to what we are going through right now, arising from a place again unconnected. So, what do you see? A disruption, anatma. Because this person's actions was not intended for that person. This person's actions gave rise at this time. Hence anatma. Why? Because there is no link. Because we would always say, I did this, I did that, I went there, I came here, I cooked this, all centric. But the thing is, now we come to realize what, let us say, certain talents that we might have, or certain pitfalls, or certain negative things that we might have as personality traits, whatever. You find those linkages somewhere else completely unrelated, arising from places that have no connection also sometimes. Hence, you realize or you come to see the anatma, the disconnectedness of self. Yes, Devika?
මට මේ දැනිච්ච ක්වෙස්චන් එක මේකයි සානහස. දැන් ඒ ගමනක් යනකොට දැන් බුදුරජාණන් වහන්සේ is a different being altogether. සංසාරික ගමනේ තිබුණන එකක් එකට මේ වෙලා එතකොට අපි as පෘථග්ජන මිනිසුන්ට එහෙම එකින් එකට ඉස්සර ආත්ම
So,
භාවයෙන් පිටත් නැද්ද කනෙක්ට්
when the consciousness is weak, let us say, let's start from there,
yes.
Vilu, right?
Okay.
When the consciousness is weak, you can see up to 5 lives.
All right. Okay.
Right? So when the consciousness is strong, you can see up to, if I remember correctly, 50.
Oh, okay.
Okay. 50. 50. If the consciousness is strong. Now, people, like when you have keen, this is not a magic trick. This, when the, let us say, the mud of the mind, when it is settled and you see the continuity of mind and matter, like streams rising and ceasing moment to moment, and when you are able to discern between this and that, mind and matter, now the clarity of mind and the power of mind taking object is stronger. So then we train the mind to go backward, backward, backward. Now, some say, there are some teachers who would say that it is unnecessary to go into the past and the future. Pauk Sayadaw, together with Venerable Mahasi, the Burmese lineage maintains that in the Paticcasamuppada, the contemplation has to be seen in three ways: past, present, and future. Hence, they use this technique to give the meditator or make the meditator experience the disconnectedness of self. Because through the lifetimes, then we might think, oh, this person, we might have had a string of different relationships and all of these things that were, done, collected throughout our journey in samsara. However, when we look at, if let us say we are looking 5 behind, or let us say 2 behind, 2 in the front, right? You might see causes and effects and ripples of this cause and effect. But you go beyond that, right? You go beyond that. It is completely different entities, different consciousnesses, same consciousness working with entirely different conditions. And when these situations change, you cannot see yourself in that. That is the insight. You cannot see yourself in that. But you're there. You're in this consciousness, in this vipassana jnana, contemplating, observing all the emotions and everything that arises. But these emotions have nothing to do with the people that you love now. This deep sense of suffering that you're feeling, this anguish that you're feeling in that birth, that pain or hollowing feeling that you might have, or the happiness that you have, is completely unrelated to anything or anyone that you feel connected to right now. Hence, what do you start feeling? You feel a sense of, what would you feel? You,
Good to be in this.
if you take it in Yonso Mansikara, right? If you take it in Yonso Mansikara, there you start again balancing the indriyas. To be able to, now you're seeing this, let us say you're seeing something as shocking. Let us say, for example, you're seeing yourself committing murder, right? Drastic example, right? Let us say you're seeing this happening. Right? Now, how do you balance the indriyas in this sort of a light? Now, this applies to all of your meditation, not only the ones who are doing Pubbhe Nivasanussati. This is something that we do in all of our meditations, balancing the indriyas. That is how those indriyas start becoming bodhangas, right? Forming the limbs of awakening. Now, you are now seeing yourself committing a crime, right? This crime of taking life. Fearsome, let us say gruesome. Okay. Not a pleasant experience. Hence, you're here, you're observing, and this is also your meditation, your practice. How do you see this? The first part is, now, when you are seeing this, when you are experiencing this, if let us say ayonso mansikara arises, then what happens?
You don't know what you're doing.
What would happen if ayonso mansikara? Udayanti, what do you think would happen? Kaushali, what do you think would happen?
Fear.
Hmm?
Fear.
Fear. What else? Fear for what?
For what you have done.
What you have done. Okay. Fear for what is now unfolding. Kaushali, another kiwi?
ඒ කියන්නේ අනත්තයි නෙමෙයි ඒක ලින්ක් එකක් තියනවා කියලා.
අයෝනිසෝ මනසිකාරයක් මම කරා මේක මමයි කරේ. Huh? Something that, how could I have done this in the past? Huh?
Shame, yeah.
ඒ පැත්තෙන්. Okay, taking
By disgust.
Yeah, all of those things can arise during the time of Ayonisomanasikara. If it is Yonisomanasikara, if you are attending with Yonisomanasikara, then what could arise? You could be observing this. You could be seeing, let us say, the impermanence of it. You might be seeing the suffering of it. You might see the grossness of it, the fact of being so entrenched within kilesha to a level where murder has been committed, right? Being so hateful, scornful, all of those elements can come. But when they do come, all of these realizations arising, arising. What is that? Either now you have to check, you have to balance the indriyas now. Okay? We often come into positions like this, isn't it? Where the mind goes off and you are not sure, is this Dhamma practice or is this overly thinking? Is this, am I thinking too much or is it Dhamma practice? Is this right? Because there's a lot of sankhara that goes into trying to discern what this is. That is where the indriya balancing comes in. For example, if Shraddha arises upon the fact that you're seeing this, that this practice is true, that you are experiencing, that you have a new form or level of trust in the practice. Now you tone it down. How do you tone it down? Even that state of Shraddha is impermanent. You get it? Meaning now you're not, remember, you're not letting go of the Shraddha. You're not demeaning the Shraddha. You're not saying, oh, this Shraddha is weak. This Shraddha is poor. No. It is like, think of a well-trained hound, right? With you, next to you, well-trained, does not go ahead of you, always stands by your side or where you position it to be. In the same manner, however, the dog, the hound is trained and is very capable of inflicting damage. However, does not get excited at every occasion. Do you understand? In the same manner, the Shraddha is there. The Shraddha is not wavering. It is there. However, it does not distract the yogi from the path. What is the path? Observation with equanimity. You equanimously observe. You equanimously observe. It is when we equanimously observe that we have non-reaction. When there is no reaction, lesser sankhara, the element becomes clearer, like a glass that is cleaned. Hence, you can see through very clearly without any sort of hallucinations or assumptions of things that might be there. It's very clear. In the same manner, you continue cultivating that balance to now you have it. It is like, again, a, a, a gold coin that no one can see, but it is in your coat. It is with you. You have it with you, but it is not out there. Why? Because that is not the purpose. You do not need the gold coin till you go to buy something. Hence, the gold coin is not out. In the same manner, the Shraddha is good, but Shraddha needs to also be tamed, or else the Shraddha turns into Dharma Vitarka. Right? Now you're thinking of Vitarka on the Dhamma ground, you're having thoughts arising. Dhamma Vitarka. Is this right? Is this right? You know, and with Shraddha, when people have a lot of Shraddha in the practice, they also want to do it perfectly. Right? They want it to be a very clean practice. Right? They are so inclined. Their mind is so inclined. Hence, what happens? The Shraddha can then create a sense of restlessness there. Neither. Hence, we balance Shraddha with what? Remember what we balance Shraddha with?
With prajna.
With Prajna. Hence, we use Prajna to balance Shraddha. When the Dhamma Vitakka is arising, meaning these thoughts about Shraddha, am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? The Prajna comes in to remind you it is not in doing, it is in being.
Being, yes. Yes.
So then you stop doing and you start being.
Being.
Then when you are being, you start see certain nuances of, let us say, attachment or whatnot there. It is like sieving flour, isn't it? Through a fine, fine mesh, sieving as we go, right? As we go. Now, in all of those instances, when we do approach or see these dhammas arise and cease, this nature, for example, let us say in the Pubbhe Nivasanusati, when you're seeing the past lives and when you are able to now observe this just as it is a Dhamma, but what is more poignant is not your surprise. That is not what is poignant, not your surprise. Okay, your surprise is only a mere reaction. What is poignant is the light of wisdom that arises there. For that to arise, for that to truly shine through in the moment, the mind must be able to remain non-reactive and aware. A position where the sankharas do not become overwhelmingly powerful. Now, one main thing, Samudaya Satcha is spoken of on the basis, or Samudaya Satcha is spoken of in the basis of what? Of Tanha. When you have Tanha towards the five aggregates, this creates self. This Tanha, when Tanha is present, we build. We build. In this building up, we create great amount of assets, memories or material assets, mental assets, whatever it is, a great amount of assets. These assets, when we experience loss of these assets, which will happen, the Buddha relates to 5 kinds of losses, if you remember. The first type of loss that the Buddha relates to is the loss of one's relatives. Jnati, jnati vyasana, vyasana, vinasa vyasana, jnati vyasana. Jnati vyasana is the loss of relatives, loved ones, close ones. The loss of relatives often causes us a great amount of grief. This great amount of grief that we experience when one loses a loved one is the experience of where the sense bases are very quickly cut off from that sense impingement. Now, this sense experience that I've been having, finding comfort in, now that sense impingement is no more. Severed. Now the shabda, that relative's sound is not heard. That relative's rupa is not seen. That relative's smell is not smelt. Touch is not felt. What is that? The cutting of sense experience caused by death. Death is that sudden sever between that experience. It is hard for one's heart to put up with it. Why? Because it was unexpected. That suffering that arises because there was a bond with this sense experience that we were having. But this bond arose towards a very specific sense experience. That is what made it unique, isn't it? That unique sense experience, we know, when that change occurs, again suffering. Hence, the loss of relatives. All of that, friends, family, all of that fall out. The loss of wealth is another type of loss. The loss of wealth, it is not so simple. The loss of wealth incurs many other grievances that follow. Loss of friends, loss of social strata, all of these different things could follow the loss of wealth. It can be a very difficult burden to bear. The loss of wealth, which could also be associated with that respective loss of identity associated with that wealth. The identity associated with that wealth is now lost. Why? Because the same sense experiences created by that wealth is not coming through, severed. Hence, that loss creates suffering. The third, the loss of or loss through illness, roga vyasana, jnati vyasana, bhoga vyasana, roga vyasana. Roga vyasana is the loss of health. It can be quite a daunting experience, something that we are unable to control. And we lose control of the status of our health. And the comfort that we find in health disappears by the arising of illness. Can also be a very difficult experience. Also could be something that gives rise to something more beautiful as well. The fourth, the loss of sila, morality, the loss of one's moral conduct, sila vyasana. Sila vyasana. To those who walk the path, to those who have focused their lives upon their practice, their daily practice and progression, this can be a big hit in the gut. Because you might feel like sometimes you might feel that you've been dragged down to step one after so many years or so many months or so many weeks of training, that we might be dragged down to step one, or you might lose, let us say even worse, you might lose the interest in Sila as well. A complete and utter loss of that respect or adherence to virtues. That could also happen. Then the fifth type of loss, dittivyasana, which is the loss of one's views, loss through wrong views, right? The loss that occurs through wrong views. These wrong views, right? Loss that occurs through wrong views. This could be the loss of one's, let us say, shraddha, the loss of one's belief or trust in the meditation practice, in the vipassana, in the in renouncing, in salvation brought about by the attainment of nibbana, lost or the loss of trust in nibbana. Oh heavens, how horrible would that be? Oh wow. Let us let that not happen. Right. Now, we have 5 types of losses. We have Jnati, right? The loss of relatives. Bhoga, the loss of wealth. Roga, the loss which happens through illness. Sila, the loss that happens through moral conduct. And then the loss through wrong view, that occurs through wrong view. Now, out of these 5 kinds of loss, which losses takes you to the woeful realms? What do you think? Jnati, Bhoga, Roga, Sila, Ditti. Out of these 5,
The
which
last two.
takes you to the lower realms?
The
Ditti
last two.
Vyasana. Ditti
Ditti and
Vyasana. Ditti. And the
Ditti and
second will
Sila.
be Sila. But Ditti will
Ditti,
be the main one.
Dhari. Ditti and Sila, Vyasana, are the 2 that takes you to the lower realms, not ill health, not the loss of relatives, not illness, which is very interesting, everyone, right? Which is very, very interesting. Which means when, let us say, at a time of illness or at a time of great loss, when a person or should a person fall into the royal realms, it happens because although we might say that this person could not cope with their loss, however, through the loss of relatives, that could have caused a loss of views or a loss of sila, which we often see happening when people deal with different types of loss, right? But it comes down to the sila and the ditti. The sila here is the mind being attracted towards a pure state of living, the moral conduct. When that is lost, or when one's Dhamma, faith in the Dhamma is lost, it is in these 2 positions that people fall into the woeful realms, not any other. Hence, even through illness, even through difficult loss, even through difficult change of circumstances, should we be able to maintain and further maybe strengthen our faith in the practice through our experience of suffering. Through our experience of suffering, we arouse some vigor to fuel the practice. We do not take it personally, because where do we take it personally? When we advert to the present with ayoniso mansikara, wrong attention, or in other words, when we advert with tanha, when we advert with greed, that is where we form that bond. This bond, when it arises, and as it arises, we know can be experienced as to see its arising and ceasing. It's arising and ceasing. So, coming to loss, the greatest loss or the loss that we must be concerned with, especially at this period of our lives, is not the loss of relatives, not the loss of wealth, nor the loss that happens through illness, because these things will definitely happen, right? Will definitely happen. But what we must be concerned with is the loss of sila and the loss of ditti. These 2 things, sila gives you a backbone when you have nothing else, isn't it? When you have moral conduct, you don't have to have a cent of money. You don't even need to own a house or vehicle. You will have confidence when you have sila to fall back on. On the other side, ditti. It is because of samma ditti that we feel that we are resilient enough to deal with adversity. If we are to lose that balance of foundation, what happens? Now we have lost the foundation of our Samma Ditti, right view and pattern of thought, which would lead to the state of Nibbana. And we have lost the sila, the confidence, the trust, the faith towards the practice. And of course, inadvertently, we will lose our health. Of course, we all will, right? We will lose our wealth, like it or not. Right? We will lose wealth, and definitely we will lose relatives. So then we have lost everything. No? Then we lose everything. So whilst we lose the things that sankhara dukkha, through sankhara dukkha, there are things that we will lose, which is relatives, wealth, and illness, right? Health. But what we can maintain regardless would be to avoid sila vyasana and ditti vyasana. Sila vyasana and ditti vyasana. In these times, we also realize the forces of Mara that are at play would feed our senses with different things, which would bring about different conditions of senses. Right? So when we do process this sort of information, in every go, we maintain yonso mansikara. ඒ කියන්නේ උදාහරණයකට although we see one person doing wrong, we don't assume that that whole community is doing wrong, for example, right? Although we would see often negative things on the news, let us say, we do not assume that everything is negative. We know that it is only the sensational news that appears on TV. Hence, now we are not deluded. It is like, how Tom and Jerry, SpongeBob SquarePants, Winnie the Pooh, I forget, how cognitive scientists and neuroscientists put in triggers for depression in children's cartoons. Right. So the children who were watching these things, especially, during their younger ages, the neuro advertising that they have used, setting triggers for depression and anxiety and all of these other things within these things that are consumed by children, horrendous, evil. And we see these things even, for example, with all the world. But the thing is, we are living in the sankhara. We are living in the sammuti. We have to, and this sammuti has to be lived up until we attain nibbana. So our course, when we are fully on the path, is not to change the entirety of the world, because we realize there is no world but us. This individual person is the world. This individual person seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, and thinking, the chitta, is what is the world. So independently, your world and my world has collided because of the Dhamma. Hence, we have connected and we share a particular world, that is the world of Dhamma. However, even in that world, the way that you would at this moment perceive with your conditioning and the way that I am perceiving what I am saying right now to you through my conditioning is again very unique and different. However, it is unique from me to you, you to me, but it is also unique from my past person. And these conditions, where did I get to know? How did I come to know? How did I come to learn? It cannot be one specific thing, right? Now, for example, the ability to study. Okay, a good teacher must be present, but also you must have been taught to read and write and learn, and for your brain being trained in learning, to absorb, to understand. So who did all of that? Not the one guru or the one teacher. That would have been your teachers from school, your parents, your friends, all of these people. So who gets the credit? There is no one to get the credit. Why? Because out of it is with all of those conditions that this became possible. In seeing that, even I don't take the credit. Even I don't take the credit. So especially, for example, because sometimes you give me so much of compliments. When this works in me, I feel as if it's not mine to take. It's not mine to take because it's really not. It is all of these things that have occurred and transpired, all of those conditions that we are sharing and doing what we are doing. But all of these things are sankhara. Our wisdom element comes into discerning what sankhara to keep, what sankhara to get rid of. What sankhara to keep, what sankhara to get rid of. There, if we are relating to the truest teachings of the Buddha, then we echo the well-known gathas that we have learned in these times. Piyato jayati soko. Piyato jayati bayam. Piyato vipamuttassa natti soko kuto bayam. Piyato jayati soko. From endearment comes grief. Piyato jayati bayam. From endearment springs fear. The loss of that endearment. The change of that endearment. The change of those feelings. Piyato vipamuttassa. For one who is freed from endearment. Piyato vipamuttassa. For one who is freed from endearment. Natti soko. There is no grief. Kuto bayang. What needless to say about bayang, fear. There is no grief, no fear. ඒත් මේම කොහොමද අපි ජීවත් වෙන්නේ? මේම කොහොමද අපි ජීවත් වෙන්නේ? How do we live like this? To live like this, it is not to say that we love less. I would say we love far more. I would say that our love finally becomes real. That our kindness and compassion finally becomes more grounded in understanding true companionship in this sansaric journey, which is youth, aging, illness, through all of this. And in going through these stages with dignity, that gives us a lot of confidence to take those difficult steps forward into the unknown. On what ground? On the ground that we succeeded, that we did not fail, on grounds that we did not fall into ayonsumansikara, lose the sila, lose the sammaditthi. That is what becomes a support. There, then we can have, then we can associate many people, but it doesn't become piyato jayati soko. Without it becoming piyato jayati soko komada, how? The person is nurtured and seasoned in the Dhamma. The person understands, truly touched by the truth that when you are overly dear over someone, that this will cause you grief. That this will cause you grief. But when that grief arises, do not push it aside as something else. Know that this arose through endearment. Know that this arose because of that endearment. that attachment. Because at the end, that would be what? That would be tanha. Not something that is unclear or unseen. Simply, it was that endearment. The second, Pemato jayati soko, pemato jayati bayang. From love comes grief, from love comes fear. Pemato vippamuttas natti soko kuto bayang. For one who is freed from love, there is no grief, much less fear. This is talking about the conditioned form of love. Love with strings. Where the feelings that arise on a sensual level, the love is dependent upon so many things. And once you have that feeling, sometimes you fear that it might change. Hence, it is talking about that fear associated with that sort of love, everyone. Now, Kalyana Mitras can live with one another and say goodbye to one another with a pure heart. Why? Because of the Dhamma again. Yes, it might be very difficult to be completely untouched up until you attain anagami, but that does not mean that we need to live within the fallacy of our imagination, thinking that everything is forever. The third, Kamato jayati soko, kamato jayati bayang, kamato vippamuttas natti soko kuto bayang. Kamato is the pleasure. Kama. From sensual pleasure comes grief. From sensual pleasure comes fear. For one who is freed of sensual pleasure, there is no grief, no fear. Through the attachment that these are the bonds that we have in our life. But at the end of the day, the houses that we live in, Unhassa patigataya, dansa makasavata tapasirin sapa, sampassanan patigataya. මේ වස් කවියක් නෙමේ මේ කියන්නේ මේ සෙත් කවියක් වගේ දෙයක් මේ කියන්නේ මේ this is the roof that we live in at the end of the day unhassa patigataya, to keep away the unhassa, the heat, the cold. At the end of the day, this provides protection for us to live out our life. In such a manner, we live freed. When you're not burdened about what is going to happen, all of these other things, sankharas that would affect one's mind, you have a sense of lightness. You have a sense of lightness. But that lightness, to get that lightness, you get it out of two ways, everyone. The first way that you will be fortunate enough to have the circumstances fitting perfectly is if you have had a very strong karmic past to bring about those, to have that freedom. You have to have good children, you have to have good relatives, you have to have good friends, you have to have good kalyan, you have to have a good priest, you have to have a good you have to have all of these things, isn't it, to have a well functioning or a trust life where you don't have those insecurities happening. But the person who does not have that has to work a little bit more. How does that person work a bit more? Through the Dhamma. The moment that you step out of the system, you can do it. The thing is, there was such a time where we can't step out of the system. If we step out of the system, we will crash, let us say, like get caught in a piece of machinery that will strip you into pieces. Neither. If you stop paying for your mortgage during the time that you had to pay for it, or whatnot, how could you have stopped that? So you get pushed in this cycle of capitalism and working and all of that, you push forward. In that path, the only way to come out of it is to step out. In stepping out, which is a truth for all of us here, I would say, who are able to step out. In stepping out, you step into something else. You step out from believing that the sammuti or the pursuit of sensual pleasures is the be all and the end all, and you shift to the pursuit of dhamma. So you're not stepping out at all. You're stepping into something greater, which is the dhamma. You've gone through the pursuit of the sensual pleasures. You've come to realize that the pursuit of sensual pleasures is vain and weak and maybe ignoble and maybe not anymore bring you any form of happiness. Hence, you now step on to the field of Dhamma. In the field of Dhamma, we must be suited to renunciate. In that renunciation, we might have to renounce piyato, pemato, kamato, tanhato, which is to do with all the things that have created bonds for you. All the things that have created bonds for you. When you're going on a big trip, somewhere, you usually start cleaning the house, repairing, putting things away, making the house suitable for you to be away for 2 to 3 weeks or so. In the same way, in preparation to into a state leading towards Nibbana, we shed by how? By stepping into the Dhamma. By stepping into the Dhamma. Why do we step into the Dhamma? Because we come to realize that all of those other pursuits is not the final pursuit that I have. The final pursuit that I must travel on to get rid of this constant sort of egging on in samsara is enlightenment. Without that enlightenment, we will always run behind sensual fulfillment through endearment, through love, through the sensual pleasures, to tanha to jayati soko, through the pursuit of lust, which what happens? In the Udhana Vagga, in the Kalaha Vagga, Kalaha Vivada Sutra, it says, Piya Pahuta Kalaha Vivada, which is me from Piya Pahuta Kalaha Vivada. That is, from endearment comes quarrels and disputes, right? Parideva Soka Saha Macharacha Manatimana Saha Pesunacha. That is, from endearment comes quarrels and disputes. Lamentation, parideva, soka, grief, machara, along with avarice. Grief, lamentations, griefs, avarice, all of these arise piya pahuta, from endearment. Manatimana, and conceit and arrogance. Pesunacha, along with slander. Along with slander. Macharya yutta kalaha vivada. Quarrels and disputes are linked to avarice. And slander too arises from dispute. Meaning, what it is saying is, when we are living in that sense of endearment, etana thiyennema sankhara godak. If we are being with people with that sense of endearment, there will always be disputes. That might arise some that are vocal, some that are silent inside you. That is the greatest dispute of all. The one that fires within you and that arises piya pauta because of endearment. But this is not saying, please, this is not saying that people are the reason. No, endearment is the reason. Endearment is the reason. So the Yonsu Mansikara, how are we here, everyone? Just as really, when we check into a hotel room and we are there for a week or so, and then we are leaving, never to think about this hotel again or this room again. We enjoy, we are in there, we make use of it, and then we move out. In the same manner, in the stretch of samsara from birth to birth, everyone, this one lifetime is like a stay in a hotel room. And with that hotel room, you have the different types of marble, maybe, or maybe it is tiled, maybe the floor is concrete, and it's a very poor hotel. Regardless, that is the hotel that you got. Hence, you have to stay there up until the end of your stay. And when you leave, you leave. During this period, whilst you're there in the hotel room, do you, let us say, complain about it, or do you make the most of it? In that same manner, like Yon's Mansikara, Ayon's Mansikara, you choose, am I going to be here with endearment, right? Am I going to be here in another way? Now, for example, you can take care of another person without endearment, but with a great amount of loving kindness. But that is not the same as endearment. Endearment and this sort of connection and tie that you choose and crave to feel, this connection that you would choose to crave to feel through endearment, through the lusting, through this social connection or ego connection, that endearment is full of sankhara. It builds. Endearment builds. It's another sankhara, no? It's another tanha. So whenever tanha is in the picture, tanha only builds. So when you want to build something with someone, there is then that tie, that bond. But what if you're with this person right here, right now? You've built enough, no? Or now? You, you built. You built so much, and now what are you doing with this person? You are in a state of being with this person, in this relationship, in this position. And through this stage, we practice in a manner of knowing, acknowledging that way of being. Not through craving, but with metta, with understanding, with true companionship, or with true companionship built upon understanding. Dhamma, for Dhamma. Just like when Vishaka, when Vishaka grew older, was old in her years, mature in her years, and Vishaka had a very close, beautiful grandchild who she considered her favorite. And this grandchild, she did not live long. So towards her teen years, she passed away. And Vishaka was overtaken by grief at her passing. So she comes to, she comes to the monastery and she tells the Buddha, and she's all drenched with her wet hair and her wet and, wear. She was wearing literally what she was wearing at home. And she's here completely lost, and she's asking the Buddha, Mante, I have lost my granddaughter, right? Lost my granddaughter. She has passed away. That is why I'm here. And then the Buddha tells Vishaka, Would you be pleased to have as many children and grandchildren as the people in Savatthi? Vishaka says, "Oh, Bante, yes, yes, I would love to have as much relatives, and grandchildren and children as the people in Savatthi." Then, Vishaka, how many people do you think passes away in Savatthi a day? Do you think 10 people, 9 people, 8 people? How many people do you think? Oh, Bante, there might be, there are no days where people don't pass away in Savatthi. Then, Vishaka, what do you think, Vishaka? In that case, you are here with wet clothes today because of your one grandchild who has passed away. If you had as many grandchildren as the people in Savatthi, you will be in wet clothes and with wet hair every single day, Vishaka. Thus is the nature of our sorrows. To have 100 deer is to have 100 sorrows. To have 90 deer is to have 90 sorrows. In this way, the Buddha says, he links this to the conditionality, where when we have a reason to suffer, when we have now clung and we have vested interest, change onto that object will bring us suffering. The moment change occurs, it is as if a small child, a cute little baby, who is adored and loved by everyone who sets eyes on this beautiful baby. However, the baby grows, the baby matures, the baby becomes older, and now the cuteness of the baby with time disappears. That change occurs to a parent who might be seeing this happening. Might be a difficult experience to see the child grow so fast and to almost in the blink of an eye to feel as if everything has passed. But all of that, when that sankhara is present, when that bandhano, when that bandhana arises, that bandhana comes with attachment and which will cause suffering. When the mind is attached to health, that will cause suffering. When the mind is attached to a certain thing, that will have the potential for suffering. In the meditation, we learn to free the mind of all of those sankharas and to be in a position where the mind does not crave or is not inclined to any form of dhamma, hence no suffering. When there is no change, there is no suffering. But when there is change, and change occurs within every chitta, chaitasika, rupa, hence all of those dukkha satcha, the whole dukkha satcha is the nature of suffering. The yonsumanskara, the moment you will take this from unwise attention, you will feel a sense of pilikul regarding your own life. But when you understand beyond that, you will realize that this is the nature of samsara, the world, not just my own, but this is the nature of each and every dhamma around. Hence, when we are observing, when we are taking objects, when we are observing, when we are taking objects, when we see the different objects arise and cease, depending upon the object, what do? We cultivate the 5 types of different perceptions. This is the 5 perceptions, right? This comes from the Khandaki Sutra. What is that? When an object is perceived and because of this object, lust arises. Lust arises. When you see lust, see it as repulsive. When you see lust, see it as repulsive. Method, perception of foulness or of impermanence. That is, let us say it is a part of the body, then you can do the foulness upon it. Let us say it is some sort of food or something, then the foulness perception can be done upon it. Of impermanence. Now, when you see the lust object, the object with lust, right? There is the lust, both lust and hate, repulsive. Okay. When there is lust in the object is tainted. Okay. When there is lust in the object is tainted. It is as if no good poison comes out of a snake's fang. No good poison comes out of a snake's fan. In the same way, no good result comes out of an object that is tainted by lust. Do you understand? Right? It is like, for example, let us say, accepting a favor from a person who is expecting a lot. Huh? In the same manner, when this lust occurs, it taints the object. Hence, at that time, the method is these two, the perfection, Asubha Bhavana and the Anicca Samya. The reflection is, now when you're with this moment, reflecting with the object, your reflection is, may I not lust for the present object? You're making a determination or reflecting there, impinging upon this, and the way that you're impinging is, you're impinging as, may I not fall for this? May I not lust for this? There is nothing to lust for. It is like, for example, let us say, the image of wanting to purchase, let us say, purchase something, which is, let us say, something that you do not require or need, right? And you're watching this, and you're saying, okay, because of this lusting, I will, because of this lusting, you see the mind getting overly attached. And with the over attachment that is now exercised upon this object, you are stressed. You see this. So it is not the object. So for example, let us say beautiful object, right? Beautiful object. Now the letting go of this beautiful object is not only in the seeing of its foulness, but the foulness can be far more deeper than the skin that you might see outside of it. To see, you see the trouble that you're going to fall at the end of this. Right? Where the lusting is tainted, has tainted the object. The second one, hate arousing object. See it as unrepulsive. When there is hate arising towards the object, there is a sense of disgust already. Right? So now you cultivate the opposite of it. How do you do it? The loving kindness meditation, right? Or the four elements to bring a sense of equanimity towards the object. This is, for example, when you're going through bodily aches and pains, you can do Vedananupassana, you can do the four element meditations. As such, you can do the Metta Bhavana towards the body. When you have headaches as such, you can do Metta Bhavana towards the body as well. Or when you're referring to a particular object that is, let us say, external, right? That is another person or a circumstance or a memory or something of that sort. Then whenever there is hate arousing, we must do the right opposite for the object. When there is hate arise, we must do the right opposite for that object, everyone. Right? And then the reflection is, remember, the reflection is like what? The reflection is like when you're observing the in-breath, you note the in-breath as the long in-breath, the short in-breath, like that. That is a reflection. In that same manner, when this consciousness arises, you're telling yourself, may I not hate this object or this unpleasant object, right? May I not react with hate towards this object. Guiding the mind back to its base. Guiding the mind back to its base. Third, the object arousing both lust and hate. Lust and hate. Okay? An object arousing both lust and hate. Now, this could be, for example, if you're observing the body, you might be observing the skin of the body, right? And you might have a certain liking towards it, but you might also have a certain sense of putridness or foulness towards it, isn't it? Right? You know the truth, but you don't want to know the truth sometimes as well. Right? In that way, you see, you can have lust towards the object and you don't want to, and you can have a certain repulsion towards that as well. At those times, they say repulsive. See it as repulsive. Because why? This phenomenon is able to convince you of two sides, the good and the bad. And where does this phenomena receive the power and the ability to have such a control over our lives? It's coming from the attachment that we have cultivated towards that phenomena, particular type of phenomena. Hence, see it as repulsive. See it as repulsive. Through foulness and impermanent sanya, anicca sanya. The reflection becomes, may I not lust for something pleasant, nor hate something unpleasant. Nor hate something unpleasant. Right? Now, for example, hate arousing object, Vedanānupassana, discomfort in the knees or the legs or the shoulders, for example, right? Hate arousing object. And in that, at that time, may I not have hate towards an unpleasant object. Hence, you're not saying no to the unpleasant object as well. Does that make sense? You're not praying for the unpleasant object to disappear. But you're there, you're present, and you're with it. Why? On what ground? Because you understand that this unpleasant object is also impermanent. So whatever that is going to happen, it's going to arise and cease. So there is no reason, no need for me to be praying for it to be of a different circumstance, because regardless, it's going to be what it is. The fourth, an object arousing both hate and lust. See it as unrepulsive. What is this? Hate and lust. See it as unrepulsive. This becomes things where you exercise hate towards maybe a person or a certain circumstance or whatever object. But this way, you're taking the loving kindness and the dhatu manasikara route. Loving kindness and the dhatu manasikara route. There. Here, there you reflect. Again, may I not hate something pleasant or unpleasant? Right? Pleasant or unpleasant. Okay? Seeing an object as arousing neither lust nor hate. What is this? Seeing an object as arousing neither lust nor hate, which is good. So what do? Equanimity. In equanimity, an important point to note is, may I not lust for pleasant, nor hate something unpleasant, nor hate something unpleasant. The important one, nor ignore something neutral. Now, because kusala and akusala, pleasant and unpleasant are very sort of heavier, the neutral we often put to a side. Hence, the equanimity in mind in this situation is such that you can watch with equanimity the pleasant, the unpleasant, and the neutral without ignoring any one of them, especially the neutral. Because we often ignore the neutral, isn't it so? Because the neutral is so bland, we often ignore the neutral and focus on the pleasant and unpleasant. But the neutral also begins to be seen as what it really is, which is not somanasa. If you take the hierarchy of sensations, the hierarchy of sensations, we would place it as somanasa. Let us say upekha. No, let us say somanasa, domanasa or unpleasant, and then upekha, isn't it? And then upekha, because it's weakest. However, when we realize that these are sensations, not higher or lower values, what we realize is neither pleasant nor unpleasant nor equanimity or upekka is higher or lower than one another. It is simply a sensation. That the pleasant, the unpleasant, and the neutral is not higher or lower than one another. We assume that it is higher or lower than one another because I like pleasure. I identify with pleasure because that pleasure is a position I am comfortable with. Hence, we assume that pleasure is beyond the others, but it's not. It's simply different experiences of an object. All right, everyone. Do we have any questions? Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Sadhu, sadhu, Sujata.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu,
Now,
sadhu.
okkomalata, sadhu, sadhu. I will see you tomorrow.
Bante, is there a sutta? Is there a sutta we can refer about?
Yes, සූත්‍ර මං එවන්නම්.
All right.
මතිකන්දක සූත්‍රයේ මේ අනිත් එකයි එවන්නම් group එකට දාන්නම්.
සූත්‍ර දෙකම එවන්න බන්තේ.
හරි දෙක.
තෙරුවන් සරණයි බන්තේ.
තෙරුවන් සරණයි
ඔක්කොමලාට
බන්තේ.
තෙරුවන් සරණයි.
That was wonderful.
තෙරුවන් සරණයි.
It was a lovely
පින්
great
සිදුවේවා.
session. Great session.
පින්
Bante.
සිදුවේවා. One of the best
Yeah.
Bante today.
Oh my.
Yes, really good.
Really, it was wonderful.
We all
That's-
need it, Bante. We all need it.
එහෙමද මම මේ අද I was wondering දැන් මේ කට්ටියට මේක මේ too basic ද මොකද අපේ මේ අම්මලා ඔක්කොම very advanced නේ හරි එහෙනම් බොහොම හොඳයි very happy එහෙනම් I'll see you tomorrow everyone තෙරුවන් සරණයි
තෙරුවන් සරණයි.
තෙරුවන් සරණයි.